Brandon, can you switch the view back? Brandon, are we good? Fantastic. Mr. Chairman, you may start the meeting.
Very good. Good morning and welcome to the April 2021 meeting of the LCTCS Board of Supervisors. Thank you for joining us today. As we transition from what has been a series of virtual meetings, we are gradually shifting back in and having board members and members of the LCTCS family join us in person. And this is a process that didn't happen quickly and is not going to be remedied quickly. But one of the things that I will tell you is it is a pleasure to see each one of you and to have a chance to say hello and also to see board members. For those of you joining us by Zoom, we look forward to the day when we can have everyone back together again right here in this boardroom. So thank you for the flexibility that you've shown throughout these last few months. We are darn good at roll call votes now, if nothing else, right? But we'll do our best to try to minimize those as we go forward. So before we begin, I'll ask the LCTCS board coordinator, Sarah Kleinpeter, to review a few points, given that we are holding a virtual meeting of the board from a new location and live streaming to YouTube. Sarah?
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Members of the board, as a reminder, as Dr. Sullivan said, the meeting is going to be live streamed online, so please be mindful of that. Those joining by remote access are asked to keep yourselves on mute during the meeting and use the raise hand feature if you have a comment or question. And when recognized to speak, unmute yourself, give it a few seconds before you make your comments, and return to mute to avoid background noise during the remainder of the meeting. If you have any trouble with your technology at any point, please text or call me. Those joining from the streaming location in this room, please talk directly into your microphone at your station. The microphone has a minor delay in relaying sound and will light up when it is transmitting the sound. You may view board items via the links posted on the LCTCS website. We will conduct a roll call vote at the start of the meeting, and each motion will require a roll call vote for approval. Members, please state your name when you make a motion. Motions must be made via sound and not gesture. Public comments may be made during today's meeting via the open conference call at 877-810-9415 with an access code of 6499147#. The information is on the notice of meetings posted at the LCTCS.
Probably.
Sarah, I think we lost you. Can't hear anything if y'all are still talking, Monty. Sarah? Appears they're frozen.
It appears they're frozen, Mr. Chairman.
Gonna be one of those days.
They got zoomed, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
We may still be live on YouTube, just to
Yes.
clarify that.
Sarah?
Yeah, Paul, they've lost power is what I just got from Monty. So they're trying to get back, but they don't have power.
Yeah, we're still all here. Okay.
Bad weather coming our way, I think.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Bye. So Sarah called and just wanted me to remind y'all that we are still streaming on YouTube. So all conversation is there. So we just may want to just mute and just wait till they come back. They had a power surge there. Here we are. We're just waiting.
Keep on to
Hey, Paul, your video is off, your audio is on.
Thank you, sir. I am
Yes.
challenged, I promise.
I understand.
For those of you not in Baton Rouge where the school is, it looks like midnight outside. I mean, it is crazy. So this could be a prolonged situation.
It's really not far. It's really not far from that here in Winsboro, as a matter of fact.
You'll need to host those meetings up here at my place. We don't ever have the lights go out or the power go away.
Well, you know, when you work every day in a fort, I guess that's part of the perks.
Yeah, I'll be retiring soon though, so I'll join the ranks.
Mr. Chairman, it's Roman. I'm going to step away for a second. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Yes, sir.
E-R.
OSTER.
Yay.
Meeting participants, we are test 1 2. We are back online.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're back. We're going to make sure we have a quorum still. Members of the board, if you're still on our Zoom, if you could turn your video back on. And Landon or Katie, could you move Supervisor McConduit? Thank you all for your patience. Those of you on Zoom, we had a little bit of a delay here, but we are back up and running. I would like to thank Chancellor Willie Smith and the team at Baton Rouge Community College for helping us to get this meeting broadcast, even in adversity.
Been a whole year of that.
I'll continue with the announcements. Any public comments received during the meeting will be read aloud by the board secretary or a designee, and all public comments must include an agenda item, name, number, and a brief statement. Public comments are going to be limited to 3 minutes per comment. And Mr. Chairman, I turn the meeting over to you.
All right. Thank you, Sarah.
Welcome.
Before I'm better call it to order while I can, I would like to call this meeting to order. The April 14th, 2021 Board of Supervisors, LCTCS Board of Supervisors. And I can't see because everybody's so little, but I believe I see Supervisor Mount, and she would ask her to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I get up. I'm afraid I'm a.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it stands.
under God, indivisible.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Ms. Sarah Kleinpeter, would you please call a roll?
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to. Supervisor Price,
Here for the moment.
Mount,
Present.
Supervisor Jackson,
Present.
Supervisor Bradford has not joined us yet. Supervisor Carter,
Present.
Supervisor Hardy Roman,
President.
Supervisor Hardy Tim is absent. Supervisor McConduit,
Present.
Supervisor Murphy is present. Supervisor Potts is absent. Supervisor Salath is absent. Supervisor Smith is absent. Supervisor Spears,
Here.
Supervisor Spawn,
Here.
and Supervisor Toops.
Here, but it's really getting scary out there.
Yes, we can hear it. Supervisor Mitchell was with us. Are you still here?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Fantastic. Supervisor Turner.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum of the board present.
Good deal. Good to hear. As a point of chair's privilege, I would like to ask that items D and E on the agenda be reviewed in succession and take up one vote for both items once the review concludes. Is there any objection? I didn't expect one. Members, you have received the agenda, and in accordance with the Louisiana Revised Statute 42, 17.1. As presiding officer, I have determined that the matters on the agenda are considered critical or time sensitive and should not be delayed. A roll call vote of those in attendance will be taken at the conclusion of the review of items D and E. Item E is the approval of the minutes from February 10th, 2021. I would like to request a motion to approve the agenda and the consideration of the matters on it. Item D, and to approve the February 10, 2021 meeting minutes as presented, which is item E.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
By Mr. Toops and a second by Ms. McConduit.
We have a
We'll do a
motion.
roll call vote for that.
Yes, please.
Supervisor Price,
Yes.
Supervisor Mount,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Supervisor Carter,
Yes.
Supervisor Hardy,
Yes.
Supervisor McConduit,
Yes.
Supervisor Murphy,
Yes.
Supervisor Spears,
Yes.
Supervisor Spawn,
Yes.
Supervisor Toops. We
Yes.
have him, good. Supervisor Mitchell,
Yes, ma'am.
Supervisor Turner.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carried.
Very good. Moving right along while we can, I'll get through my report just as fast as I can. Would like to offer our congratulations to Chancellor Jimmy MacGyver Sawtelle on earning his Doctor of Education in Adult Learning and Development degree from Northwestern State University of Louisiana. Congratulations to him. We would like to remind you of the LCTCS workforce experience. That's on April the 27th. I think everyone has been contacted regarding that. I believe it's in the evening or in the afternoon, if I recall correctly. Do want to highlight the outstanding partnerships around the state. We had recent events with Delgado Community College and Ochsner Health and River Parishes Community College and United Way. There will also be a groundbreaking up in my part of the world at Louisiana Delta Community College's Ruston campus on April 23rd at 10:30 a.m. And I would like to note for the record that Supervisor Tim Hardy is absent today due to his participation as a member of the selection committee for the new ACCT president representing LCTCS and this board. We appreciate Supervisor Hardy and all his hard work on behalf of the board and on behalf of the ACCT. So with that, and since we all still have electricity and we're still on the air, I will turn it over to Dr. Sullivan for his report.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to reiterate, thank you for your flexibility for those on Zoom as well as for those in the room. I will also ask for those of you on Zoom, please pay attention to your local weather. I know there are lots of storms rolling through the area. Don't be afraid to jump up and find the most appropriate place in your current venue if you find weather to be problem. For those in the room, if we do experience bad weather, we're going to go out this exit to my back left, to your right, and into the hallway area just outside, which is the shelter area for storms. So just to be aware this morning, we've experienced a number of storms over the last couple of weeks and heightened sense of awareness. So I very much appreciate you keeping an eye on those. I want to start with just a few updates, and in particular, you heard the chairman mention the partnership between Delgado Community College and Ochsner. This board had the opportunity to approve the CEA, but at the time we really couldn't come out and talk about the great partnership between our Delgado Community College and Ochsner Health, and it's certainly led to a whole series of opportunities for colleges that are represented here in the room. And just want to see if maybe Chancellor Stibe is available to give us a quick update. Yes, come on forward. I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. Very good, Chancellor. Mask make it difficult to know who's in the room, right?
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Sullivan, members of the board, my colleagues. It is indeed an honor for me to be with you this morning and just to share the good news that's happening at Delgado Community College. March 31st, we okay, can't hear me. March 31st, we broke ground on the new Ochsner Center for Nursing and Allied Health. It's historical in nature in that the Charity School of Nursing and the Division of Allied Health will be housed in one location under one roof. What this means for the institution is absolutely groundbreaking in that our students will have an opportunity to collaborate through interdisciplinary learning and experiences, which will provide an exceptional educational model. The building will boast 120,000 square feet. We will have an emergency room located in that building, as well as an operating room as well. We are extremely excited about the partnership. It's a $20 million donation, $10 million that will go towards the facility. The construction of the facility has already begun with a completion of fall 2022 and first classes to take place spring 2023. There's also a $10 million match, which will encompass $1 million each year for training that Delgado Community College will provide to Ochsner employees. Special thanks to Dr. Sullivan, to this board for your support. Special thanks to Joe Marin and Leo Hamilton for the advising and the guidance. And also special thanks to the team, my Delgado team, Ron Russo, Cheryl Myers, and Harold Gaspard. And so I will take any questions that you may have related to the facility.
Questions for Chancellor Staub? All right, hearing none, I want to thank Supervisor McConduit for joining us for the ceremony and for your words on behalf of the board for that ceremony. Excellent comments and great turnout for the event as well. And this is the kind of partnership that I think is the future, not just for Delgado Community College, but really more broadly across the nation. These kinds of partnerships are really resonating. So Chancellor, thank you for your leadership. Very much appreciate all the work. Very good. Sticking with a Delgado theme, just this past month, Delgado is recognized as one of the nation's top 50 community colleges by the higher education research firm Intelligent.com. Congratulations to the folks at Delgado. In addition, a quick update on the work going on at Sewella Technical Community College. The rebuild there is well underway, and as our chancellor has shared with me a number of times, once we get folks under contract and the construction begins, things tend to go well. I think that's his way of saying, as long as we can keep bureaucrats out of the mix, we're going to be okay. Is that? I think that's the interpretation that I have anyway. So the Sewella campus rebuild phases 1, 2, and 3 are currently underway with the $26.1 million in contracts already awarded. All buildings are scheduled to be completed by fall semester of 2021. Let me say that one more time. All buildings on the Sewella campus are set to be restored and in use by fall of 2021. Having been through this process with both Hurricane Rita as well as with Hurricane Katrina, 14 and 15 years worth, that is miraculous to be back on that campus, particularly given the devastation and the impact that we witnessed at that campus. So Chancellor, congratulations to you. I know there's a lot of work left ahead of us, but thank you for everything that you have done to get us to this point. Phase 4 does involve the Cltccc building, which was the original building for this campus. I say original college building, maybe is a way to say it. Lots of hangars, as you guys know, there on the Sewella campus. That building has been recommended for replacement at an estimated cost of $6.4 million. A local funder has provided $1 million in grant funding for 2021, including $250,000 in student scholarships and $150,000 for hurricane repairs. Chancellor, just continue to do great work. We're proud of what you have done there, and I'm proud of the investments that people are making in the community and in the college. So congratulations to you. All right, jump into an event that we were so proud to be a part of yesterday as Interim Chancellor Carlson leading River Parishes Community College in a $1 million contribution by the folks at Valero, and the grand opening of the new St. Charles campus. Now I'm going to have to say this slowly so that everyone knows the name of this campus. It is the Valero United Way River Parishes Community College St. Charles campus. Now that's a long name, but let me assure you, it is absolutely appropriate for us to have each of those parties named because of the contributions that the community has made. This is a classic example of how a community college expands into a region with the community making an investment. The folks in St. Charles Parish didn't turn to the legislature and say, give us $20 million. They went into their own pockets and decided they wanted to educate their own. And this becomes the 54th parish where we have a footprint in community and technical colleges in Louisiana. And what I think is most incredible about this campus is it represents the largest parish by population.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose sound?
We lost something.
I can still see them.
Yeah. I guess I said.
They're frozen again.
It may be frozen. Yeah, it's pretty nasty here.
Yeah.
I'm seeing electricity surges as well.
Yeah. That's all we can do is just wait it out, mute it, and see what happens.
I'll be here all night.
Helen, you may want to mute yours. Sarah called and said that they were running on a generator there. They've lost network. And I said, well, we were just patiently waiting. So we're all here and we're all on mute and just wait to hear.
Well, on the plus side, this has given me an opportunity to finish up an assignment I didn't get to finish last night.
Please do.
Oh, I'm working.
Make good use of your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This might be the longest meeting we've had.
Yeah, everybody's getting their money's worth on this one.
The weather's getting bad up here. Just tell them.
Well, it's been bad here. It's thunder and lightning carrying on, but it's slacked up for the moment. But
The
so far,
raining,
so good.
thunder, and lightning here.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to rain all day, is what I seen on the news last night.
Yeah, it's raining. You look at the radar and it's just raining everywhere, I think.
Then I think up north it's happened like some snowstorms or something.
Looks like something's happening again.
Back.
Apologies again for the interruption there, and hopefully everyone is able to remain with us. It looks from the number of participants as though that was the case. I will move quickly through one or two other items on the president's report so we can get to the meat of the agenda and hopefully be able to maintain a connection here. I was just in the midst of talking about the Senate Bill 148, our MJ Foster Promise Program. For those board members, you have the talking points available there to you. We do anticipate next week we will be in front of Senate Education and look forward to moving that bill forward. Lots of excitement around it throughout the state. And I want to thank the chancellors for an exceptional job with the advocacy tour this year. Also want to thank board members. Nearly every single meeting we had multiple board members in attendance, and I cannot overstate the impact that has for legislators when they see board members participating in those sessions. As a quick budget update, you are aware of the executive budget issued put forward by Governor Edwards. It is the best higher education budget that we've seen in about 2 decades. So we're excited about the potential there. And I know that we've had an opportunity to walk through some of the elements of that budget and look forward to moving that one forward this afternoon at 1 o'clock. As soon as we wrap up this board meeting, I'll be in front of House Appropriations defending that budget and look forward to a good turnout there. Another quick item, we will be kicking off a search at River Parishes Community College for the next permanent chancellor. There is a survey that is moving out to the college where we're able to collect information about what the college believes it needs over the next few years in its next chancellor. So we'll continue to keep you up to date on that front. And with that, I will end the president's report and move directly into the board development session. And for staff who are involved in those board development sessions, I would just ask to keep the discussion relatively short, but certainly would like for board members to be able to ask questions as you feel the need. We'll begin with the first item, which is the Title IX update. I want to be very clear with you. When we listed this on the agenda and it says Title IX update, I want to be very clear. There are no specific Title IX issues within our community and technical colleges at this moment. Given the heightened environment that we have, or heightened sense of concern around the Title IX issue, we felt like it was important to come to the board and make sure you understand the steps that have been taken that put our board in a place of being able to respond appropriately to the Title IX circumstance. In particular, I think it's important that we note off the top, there is federal law, there is state law, there is state policy at the Board of Regents level, there is policy within the LCTCS system, and there's policy at each individual college. What we are experiencing at this moment in Louisiana around Title IX is a leadership problem. That leadership problem can exist anywhere in this state or in this country. At the moment, it happens to be visiting our friends across town. But to be very clear, the Title IX issue is one that we have exceptional leadership around Title IX. I want to thank specifically Gina Doucette, our Chief Human Resources Officer, as well as Amber Blair, who is just, both of these guys have done an exceptional job of becoming experts in the Title IX space to make sure that our students are safe on our college campuses. Now, let's acknowledge the obvious. We don't have dormitories. We're non-residential institutions. That changes the game around Title IX. But what has been put in place by these two individuals and our colleges more broadly across the state, I think will protect us and our students for a long time. So with that, let me ask the two of you to come forward and just make some brief comments. And perhaps if we can, Gina, we'll start with you from the employee perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. So we already have training for state employees for sexual harassment, and we are going to probably add a few more items after session because we know that there'll be some additions that the legislators want us to add to our training, but we do track the training. I'll just do it. Oh,
Closer to
so,
you.
Microphone closer. There we are.
all right. So anyway, so we do track that training. We are going to add, though, extra pieces to the Title IX piece so that employees understand, because truly it's everyone's responsibility. It is not just the leadership. Yes, the leadership was an issue with the current situation, but it is everyone's responsibility for us to have a safe and inclusive environment at all of our locations. So I'll let Dr. If y'all have questions about the employee side, I'll be happy to answer them now.
Do you?
Thank you. And good morning to all of you. It's nice to see you in person. And thank you for your interest in this topic, which is a personal passion of mine. We have done, I think, tremendous work over the last 6 years in terms of building infrastructure for training and for leadership so that all of our colleges are well prepared to kind of ebb and flow with the coming regulations. Until August, there weren't specific regulations for that. And so now we're contending with what that looks like on our colleges. It is always a resource issue in terms of training, leadership, finances, of course, but we are handling that challenge well. We put in place annual training for all of our colleges. We provide a TCCC training to them at discounted rates. We negotiate that type of training for them. That is top of the line training, nationally recognized training. So we are really fortunate that we have that resource at our disposal. We are looking to expand that to make training and leadership more intentional, certainly. And with that infrastructure, our next step will be to build a culture of reporting. We want our colleges and our students to know how to report, where to report. So the engagement with our Maxient system, which is on the cusp of launching as we speak, will make that even easier. Our launching of our new website kind of centralizes all of those processes. So I think we're doing what we need to be doing to respond to this challenge.
Good. Any questions from members of the board?
Based on what you've described so you have a prototype or you are using a national format for our colleges and
training? Is that
okay?
What
Yeah.
Yes, yes, ma'am. That's correct.
So in my mind, it's like accreditation of any. So is it based on the research nationally so that we're able to say that about our system?
Absolutely. TCCC is the foremost leader in this space. And so they offer certification courses for civil rights investigators, which many of our college staff have attended. Newly are the new regulations implementations, hearing officer training, soon to be advisor training. So all of the new roles guided by the regulations are offered through that training. Yes.
Good. Then when you actually train faculty, is there some form that's completed that we sign and the individual signs that they've been through the training, and is it common throughout our system?
Faculty, I'll lend to Gina.
So the training that Dr. Blair is discussing is more along the lines of the people that would help on the student side. On my side, it's training of every single person that is employed. So yes, we do track that. We track it online. They take the training online and we track it through a system that we use here and throughout the system.
You track it on per training basis or per quarterly basis or
An annual training
annual training? Okay.
at higher and annually thereafter.
Okay. So it would be on file in that regard. Okay. Good job. Thanks.
One other point to your question. We are in the midst of a discussion about who is a mandatory reporter. We believe that should be everyone within the organization, not just one or two individuals at the college campuses. And that's something that we have learned as a lesson learned, if you will, from the circumstances playing out now. Other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let's jump to a discussion that we've had now for about the last 5 or 6 years. You'll recall that this board asked that we develop a fiscal health index going back to, I believe it was about 2014, 2015. And as part of that fiscal health index development, we knew at the time that was one piece of the puzzle, looking at the financial circumstance, the budgets, the reserve dollars, et cetera. What we know for certain is as the state of Louisiana's fiscal situation continued to sort of worsen over the last 3 or 4 years, we knew that we needed a broader institutional health index that includes finance, but also looks at some other elements. As enrollment continues to be a larger and larger part of the whole in terms of our operations, we have done as much as anyone in the country at streamlining the cost, if you will, that is non-core. And non-core, I mean, along the lines of things like centralization of payroll, centralization of the internal audit function, a whole myriad of things that we have put in place to minimize administrative overhead, pushing as many of those dollars back into the classroom as possible. What we realized with the pandemic and the impact that it had on the state's revenue picture, obviously all of this is pre-stimulus. We were looking at about $1.3 billion shortfall in the state of Louisiana. That caused all of us to pause for a second to begin to think about what the impact would be for our colleges. And so as a part of that, our chancellors came together. They put together a whole series of metrics that are around institutional health to give this board a better picture of where institutions stand. So as part of that, I thought it would be a good idea to ask Joe Marine and Renee Cintron to come forward and talk about those institutional health metrics. In addition to that, we will then follow with a discussion about the stimulus funds and the plans that we have college across all of our colleges to explain how we intend to make use of those resources that have been provided by the federal government. And then, of course, as we wrap up, I'd like to ask a couple of our chancellors to come forward and talk about what the implications are at a local level, and we'll wrap up the discussion there. So with that, I'll turn to Joe and to Renee.
Morning. As Dr. Sullivan mentioned, since 2015, we've had the Fiscal Health Index, which was a very high level, cut and dry approach to at least having some assurances of our college's financial health as they ended out one fiscal year and began another fiscal year. And that was strictly a fund balance analysis as compared to their operating budget as colleges went to the new year. And as Dr. Sullivan said, while it gave us some assurances of colleges' health to ask questions in the future, we find ourselves in a position where, given the budget uncertainty going forward, that we need to drill down. And as Dr. Cintron is here with me as a separate part of this, we've had a programmatic health index where we review programs on a regular basis to determine how healthy they are and so forth. So what this is really is an attempt to merge the financial perspective and the instructional programmatic side together so that we can have some assurances going forward in terms of what we need to do to make actions and to be able to keep our resources as best we can going forward. The exercise isn't so much a comparison between colleges to see how college A compares to college B, but it's more so a longitudinal approach. in the sense that to give college chancellors, and not that they aren't doing this already, they certainly, by all means, with their CFOs, do their own internal management, their own internal review of programs and their finances, but to provide, first off, a commonality across colleges. First, secondly, to then allow college chancellors to have a baseline to judge going forward what they need to do. And what I mean by that is obviously is if you look at a straight dollar per credit hour basis, it gives you some basis of what your cost is per your credit hours. And so the intent or the thought might be, well, I've got to save the expenditures. I've got to reduce expenditures in order to save dollars. And how do I do that? Do I then move from full-time faculty use to adjunct use? But as with most things, there's a flip side to that. You can go sometimes to the extreme where you have too many adjuncts, as we had years ago with one of our colleges 15, 16 years ago, where there was an over-reliance on adjuncts. And SACS kind of came in and was looking at that as a potential issue because you were losing the institutional instructional core to the college. So as with all things, there's balance, but what this is intended to do is to give a baseline to have chancellors to work going forward, as we know that in two to 3 years, definitely there will be some state fiscal challenges that we will all have to face, and that we will have some obligations that we will have to continue going forward into the future. One of them being faculty pay raises that are in the executive budget currently for not only us, but also for the secondary side. It's an issue that they in turn also are going to have to deal with in terms of how do I maintain these raises if indeed the state finds itself in a financially difficult situation going forward. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Centrone to see if he has a few words that he'd like to say.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. Good morning, board members and guests. As Joe mentioned, for years, we have conducted a program health index composed of evaluations of enrollment, time to completion, graduation, separately from the fiscal health index that's looking at revenue aspects. So what we're proposing here is taking a look at those two things combined. So the application to enrollment ratios and how does that relate to the revenue of the college? As we know, the revenue of the college is in enrollment, and the cost of the college is in instruction as well. So, but bringing those two aspects together is important as we continue to grow and move towards more sustainable institutions on a long-term basis. So some of the things in the institutional health index that we're proposing, application to enrollment, I mentioned enrollment itself and how it relates to the student credit hours and relates to revenue and tuition, as well as cost per credit hour production of programs, the benefit revenue analysis of instructional units and instructional programs and so on. So those are some of the examples of the blend of what the academic and workforce folks are doing on the instructional side to the CFO work looking at revenue and expenses. So bringing those two worlds together.
I'm reminded, Supervisor Spawn, that you were a part of a conversation with former Supervisor Hemperly and members of the board office staff about 5 years ago on this subject. And at the time, I think there were some limitations in terms of the data that allowed us to be able to drill in and see that institutional perspective at the level that I think that you were interested in seeing. But please know that was not lost on us. We've continued over the last few years to try to develop that data infrastructure, and also to be able to get to a point where we understand fundamentally what does it cost to produce a credit hour. And that's going to be different college by college, but the variance is something that we have to take a look at. And more importantly, we have to recognize that in 2023-24, we will see a downturn in revenue. It's coming. And anyone who's out there thinking about how they're going to spend the stimulus dollar without thinking about the cost going forward is probably going to have a difficult time surviving 2023 and 2024. But that, as you know, is not the approach that our colleges have ever taken or will take. So this is timely, I think, for us, and really, I think, makes a good transition then into how do we believe we need to spend the stimulus dollar in order to decrease the overall cost infrastructure. If our cost basis remains the same in FY23 as it is today, we will struggle. And so we've got a runway now as a result of those federal stimulus dollars to help us to work our way out of that current position. So with that, Joe, I'd like to ask that you take a minute and kind of walk the board through the stimulus dollars that we have received to this point and what that impact is likely to be.
Certainly. I'd like to point out my visual aid for the day is a legal size sheet. I was going to print it out on a letter size sheet, but I ran out of space because the challenge we have, which is a good one, is that ourselves and others, we keep getting federal stimulus funds, right? Which actually began last April when we received our first amount of CARES Act dollars, going forward, and other funds since then. And to ease some confusion, you'll hear these funds called different names. You'll hear them called CARES 1, CARES 2. You'll hear GERF funds. You'll hear HERF funds. And so I'll just stick with HERF, Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds. We received those, April 20 was our first distribution, and then we received HERF 2 in December of 2020. And HERF 3 is currently has been awarded in March, and we have not received those funds as of yet. But as with all federal funds, there's a certification process that we have to go through. Our colleges have to contact the feds, apply for the funds, get approval for the funds. Not that we have to necessarily submit plans, but we do need to at least certify that we are going to be using the funds for the intended uses of them. To date, we have been allocated a total of $317.5 million. That's a lot of money, but that's not free money. There's actually a movement and thoughts out there. You'll hear people discussing about how we have all this money and we can do great and wonderful things with it. Well, as the federal government says, I'm with the government, I'm here to help you. They also have rules and regulations in terms of how we can use those dollars. And in many cases, a lot of uncertainty, which in and of itself is a little bit of a challenge. The funding that we have received has been pretty much divided into two pots: student funds or student aid and institutional aid for colleges and universities. The student aid is pretty straightforward. It's dollars set aside that colleges are to funnel through their accounting systems, their student aid systems, to validate and verify student information, to make sure that the student obviously is eligible and obviously still enrolled at the college, and using the means by which we distribute federal financial aid as the vehicle to get dollars to those students. So we are indeed not cutting checks and having students come to colleges to collect them. We are using the electronic processes we have in place to get them those funds quickly, efficiently, and with the accounting in mind to make sure that they are accounted for appropriately, so that when auditors come in, which they will and have the data resources available to identify those students to move forward. To date, we've distributed roughly about $42 million in student financial aid. There still remains roughly $83.3 million from the third HERF 3 distribution of funds that we have available for student aid that we will work through. Again, we have not received those funds, so they have not been dispersed. We've just been awarded or allocated those funds. The other institutional funds that we have, we will obviously have to work through. That's a little bit more of a challenge because it's not as cut and dry as a student aid. Basically, when the government gave us a student aid, they said, here's the dollars. Basically, find the students based on very general criteria and allocate and award those funds, which we did. The first distribution we did was last May of 2020. Second distribution we did actually was this last March for the second round of funds that we got in December. So we have about a month to 2 month turnaround time that we're getting these dollars out to students. We will work through plans for the third distribution of student aids. Back to the institutional dollars. We have encumbered roughly, or expended actually, roughly about $22 million in expenditures directly related to COVID expenditures, whether that is retrofits, PPE, sanitation services, online, especially in particular, online delivery of courses is very important because, as Dr. Sullivan has noted in the past, all our colleges made a quick pivot from on-campus delivery to online delivery of instruction. I personally am happy that they did that. I've got 2 students taking online classes at BRCC, and my children, 2 of them, love and hate me that in the sense that I can look on Canvas and see what they're doing. And keep up with their grades and nag them and so forth. But that pivot wasn't at without cost. That had to take place. On the flip side, there are some things that are very, given the unknown, are very much a challenge. And what I mean by that is, for example, this idea that the dollars can be used for capital outlay, that we can suddenly all of a sudden build buildings if need be. And that is indeed not the case. The federal government is given some general guidelines that what those funds can be used for is for retrofits, minor retrofits and modifications to facilities to accommodate COVID type services, whether it's taking out a wall potentially between two classrooms to make them larger. One of the interesting things we've come across is that while we can, let's say, retrofit water fountains to make them more COVID safe, we can't install new plumbing. We can't, anything that requires new plumbing is off the table. So you can't install new water fountains, which you would think you'd want to have more water fountains possibly kind of further spread out among your campus. Such is not the case. So as we work through these issues, it's a work in progress. We've engaged a legal firm that we've had a relationship with for the last 22 years dealing with the Perkins, federal Perkins program. Actually, the person worked for the feds, actually developed the Carl Perkins Act when he was at the Department of Education at Washington, D.C. So we're working through these challenges, and we will have a plan. We have roughly 2 years to spend these dollars, which we don't anticipate will be a problem. I just want to leave you with the knowledge and the impression that, again, these are not free dollars. Federal dollars are never free dollars. And if anything, they get scrutinized very heavily, not only by our state auditors, federal people also will come in to review these funds, how they were expended. And with that, I'll just open the floor for any questions you may have.
So,
Hey, Joe, I have a question just on the student aid. I was just wondering, are those dollars, can they be used for currently enrolled students who were enrolled when COVID hit, or can they be used to assist new and incoming students?
Can be used for existing students. I don't believe they can be used. I'd have to look further into the guidance for new students. And
Okay.
even when you award the dollars for existing students, even if they owe a balance currently on their bill, there's a prohibition against let's say forcing them or asking them even to use those funds to pay off their debt to the college, if that makes sense. It's really related to their life expenses that they may have, otherwise, just like Pell is, obviously.
What are the limits on how much per student?
It's really a simple mathematical equation where and it varies. The methodology is basically taking the student population that is identified to be eligible, which is normally a Pell eligibility, and dividing it by the total dollars that you've been allocated. The college has been allocated by the feds. So it will vary by college based on the number of Pell students that they have and be the dollars that they've been allocated by the federal government. So it's not a flat rate necessarily. It's more so a range depending on what college you're looking at. Some colleges with low Pell students who are eligible, you will obviously, depending on what they get allocated by the federal government, they could have a high dollar value, let's say $1,000. Whereas maybe at a Delgado or a BRCC that has a high Pell population, given their allocation, it might be $600 because they just have more students to dole out the limited resources that they have from the government.
So the feds gave us a formula for those allocations?
Sir, they based it on a formula that they use based on Pell students for the most part. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
Stimulus money, does the federal government provide the manner in which, if because we're so focused on audits, are there any, I hope there's no assumptions that it's very specific as to what they expect us to do and how to report it?
Right. So that's a good question, Supervisor Mountain. That's really the crux of the matter, is that as much as states are scrambling to understand how to use these dollars, the federal government is also scrambling themselves, trying to figure out how to use these dollars. And so what they've been doing in the past is issuing some guidance. When it started, it was very scattered, I would say, depending on, in the sense that you had colleges who have local delegated representatives at the USDOE who they were asking questions and getting one answer. And then you might have another college someplace else asking their contact, again, duly authorized to provide information from the USDOE, giving possibly a conflicting answer. We came across that issue in the first distribution of federal funds, and have kind of worked through some challenges with the auditors. A case in point was when we switched to online delivery. the point was put out that we could not get reimbursed for any student who was enrolled in an online program. So this is where it gets really, really technical and specific, but it's very straightforward. There's a distinction between a student being enrolled in an online program versus an online course, in the sense that if you are enrolled, let's say in the executive MBA program at LSU, that's an online program from the start out. It's an online program. That's all you do. We at the LCTCS have no online programs per se. We obviously deliver courses online, but we don't have programs that are all online. That's the fine distinction, but it's the fine distinction that we actually were going to be written up. One of our colleges were going to be written up for that until the feds finally backtracked on that guidance and said that we were okay. But that was a process that took about 3 months with a lot of phone calls with auditors, with the feds, with other folks on something as simple as online delivery, right? So.
Yes, that's my concern, is that, anything that the manna from heaven, so to speak, what frightens me is the details, and you don't really want to receive it and just sort of do it.
Have to repay it.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
And I will say this, the federal government has learned from that exercise as well. As painful as it was for us, it was also for them.
Can I ask a question? I want to circle back to the point about the value of the awards based on the population, the student population. Is it that, do we have the flexibility to then, let's say for your BRCC or your Delgados, because of the larger volume, can we then award more dollars there to compensate and stretch the value?
We do have that ability to some extent. The colleges are allowed, all colleges and universities are allowed to use their institutional funds. Again, that second pot, either you have the student aid and you have the institutional aid. They're able to use that institutional aid to award student aid if they so wish. So they could increase that dollar value.
Yeah, I was just thinking because just from an equity standpoint, right? You don't want the colleges serving the most students in need, which is obviously what this aid is designated for, is for students in need, to have to kind of shrink the size just based on the population, the total volume that they serve. And in essence, should we be course correcting to make sure that the funds are more equitably distributed?
And so, Supervisor McConaughey, I'll mention it's a part that slipped my mind, but for those students that are predominantly Black institutions, PBIs is what the federal government refers to them, or minority serving institutions, there were special allocations that were made in addition to the base funding that was provided for some of our colleges, BRCC, Delgado being one of them, obviously, SLCC, maybe even trying to think there's a few others that I'm missing. But again, the federal government did recognize that there was a greater need, obviously, for certain institutions more so than others, and allocated millions of dollars to that goal.
Okay. I just always want us to kind of keep that in mind as we, if we have any flexibility in our distributions, we always want to keep equity at the forefront. Thank you.
Joe, it's a good point. When you mentioned we can elect, I guess, choose to use institutional aid to supplement students. And again, I'm not, that's you guys' decision to make. Is that under discussion? Is that something we're thinking about? Tell you what struck me, someone sent that report about the fees that our students are paying, and that absolutely blew my mind. Not just to see what's happening to our students in terms of the fees. Certainly we were at the bottom of that list, but so I was wondering if not only us, but will the other systems use some of these funds maybe to offset some of these exorbitant fees that students are paying, especially and again, we have no control over that, but that's just a comment I wanted to make. But
right, and that's a good comment, Supervisor Jackson. Obviously, it is a concern. As to put things in reference, again, we've distributed roughly, again, $42 million, and we still have $83.3 million from this last distribution available for student aid that we will have to work through, strictly for student aid. on those plans. First point. Second point is what makes a lot of this a bit of a challenge also is that the pandemic isn't over, right? I mean, I know we hope for the best and people are getting vaccinated and the summer months are rolling around and so forth. We look for the best, but the other challenge is just the unknown of the future, kind of what will happen, where will we go, and where will we be? Talking to staff and myself personally, I never would have thought a year would have passed as quickly as it did. For some, it took a long time, and maybe it was 3 years. But for me, it felt like this pandemic has passed so quickly because we've been reacting and responding appropriately that it seems like it happened. We just started this last month, at least for me personally. That's what I'm just saying. It's just the activity. But going into the future, the unknown. We just don't know where we're going to be on multiple levels, whether it's health, safety, finances, and so forth.
As a Jackson, I would just add that right here at Baton Rouge Community College, just as one example, there are dollars that are being provided as an incentive for students to enroll in a full-time load of courses during the summer. Those incentives will certainly drive more students to enroll full-time, but also will help students get to completion faster, which is certainly something that is a benefit. But there are a multitude of different ways that the colleges are approaching those dollars and trying to make sure that we get them pushed out in a way that is beneficial to the student, both financially as well as from an education and training point of view. Yes, sir.
I have a question. So the last allocation of the 83 million, as someone who's about to graduate, but still acquired expenses because of COVID, are y'all still going to be pushing that towards the graduated students, or?
Unfortunately, I don't know. We just were awarded these dollars this last March. We were allocated these dollars in March. We don't have them as of right now currently. So obviously we're working towards a plan to get them distributed. I just don't know if we will have them in time by the time the semester ends.
Mind as well that these three stimulus packages came across two different federal administrations. And so the first two fell under the previous administration. The third package is under the current Biden administration. And so you can imagine that as you're shifting from one administration, one Secretary of Education, one staff to another, there are guideline changes that are coming about. So those are some of the questions that we're having to grapple with right now. Even if we had the dollars in our hands today, I can't tell you that we could push those out because we're still awaiting the guidance. To the point that Supervisor Mount made a few minutes ago, we want to be sure that we get the dollars pushed out and that it accomplishes the purpose, but we also want to do it in a way that doesn't come back as an audit finding. So we certainly will be digging into that question and can give you an answer in short order.
Thank you.
Perhaps if we could, let's transition to bring not Supervisor, Chancellor Wainwright. Goodness gracious, I called you everything but brother there, right?
Go ahead.
And Chancellor Bateman, I got that one right. Those two gentlemen will come forward and provide a little bit of context from the college perspective. And perhaps if we can, we'll ask Chancellor Wainwright to kick off the conversation for us.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan, Chairman Price, and members of the board. I'm actually gonna, Rick and I talked about a strategy and talking about how we've developed some of the work. So I'll have Dr. Bateman begin, and then I'll wrap up.
Good morning, Chairman Price, Dr. Sullivan, members of the board. These are challenging times. I don't know that there have been more challenging times for our colleges in terms of ensuring fiscal health, but we are hard at work at precisely that. I do want to thank this board for the work that was done to identify the reserve fund balance as a means for measuring our health, our fiscal health. And so that will continue to be an important indicator, and targets toward our reserves will continue to be extraordinarily important. But I appreciate that Dr. Sullivan invited chancellors to look at other indicators of fiscal health. And what we chose to do was to look at leading indicators of fiscal health. You already heard Dr. Cintron speak about the role of the cost per credit hour, enrollment, retention. There are others. We're also looking at the average of student credit hours enrolled as an important fiscal milestone along the way toward fiscal well-being. And we think that those are important to make sure that throughout the year, we're heading in the right direction and we are moving toward a financial position that allows us to put reserves away and meet the thresholds that this board has set for each institution. I celebrated last week my sixth year as chancellor, and it was in this room that this board and this president invited me to the job that I've loved more than any other that I've ever had. In that first year, I sat down with my colleague to the left to talk about fiscal health of our institutions, and I found at that time that he had a well developed way to study his own institution. He was taking a good hard look at the intersection of the class schedule and the college finances. And he's evolved an approach that I think is worth sharing with the board. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Wainwright.
Thank you, Dr. Bateman. One of the things I wanted to just share with the board was for us at North Shore, it begins with budgeting, especially in looking at the health of our rural campuses and our rural communities. The educational resources we provide are certainly vital there. So for us, it begins with a budget worksheet where we pretty much do all of our fiscal planning for the year, not only accounting for instructional costs, but accreditation related costs, holistic student support. From that, we run quarterly revenue expenditure analysis by campus, by community, by program, by faculty member. And that is extremely important as we look at enrollment patterns. For example, where you have some campuses that are heavy technical versus some that offer more of an academic component, just by virtue of the structure of the college and the organization. That exercise has boded well for our college, where we're able quarterly to identify peaks and valleys and make adjustments accordingly to ensure we can provide the services to those communities. With that also comes effective restructuring and reorganization. And I want to commend Dr. Sullivan, Ms. Doucette, all of our human resource directors across the state, because quite honestly, many of the colleges I've found across the nation who continue to struggle are those colleges that have an organizational structure that reflects a student population of 10, 15 years ago. And I will tell you, the Louisiana Community and Technical College system has been progressive in looking at restructuring, reorganization, and that's a critical component certainly to our success as well. I do want to share of what Joe talked about. I want to commend every Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration across this system. Both Dr. Bateman and I sit in on those calls with our CFOs, and they're doing incredible work in navigating the Federal CARES Act funding and really sharing strategies amongst the system. And I think that that's going to bode well for us long term. And finally, I think we need to really look beyond a college enrollment. We really have to dissect that enrollment. I'll give you an example. You know, if you look at the pandemic last fall at North Shore, while we had an overall college enrollment decrease, we actually had an increase in technical studies. And that's very important strategically for us because technical studies represents the majority of our program mix, 23 programs of study. Technical studies for us tends to enroll higher student credit hour generation. We have more full-time seeking students in technical studies than we do in transfer and dual enrollment. The majority of our drop was in dual enrollment due to delayed starts and transfer due to the lifting of admission standards for our universities. So when you factor all of that, we were pleased in the fall to see a 2.3% increase in our traditional adult student population in technical studies. And from that knowledge, we were able to maximize strategic opportunities for growth this spring. And of course, as you know, now that we've achieved SAC-COC accreditation, we're going to be able to bring on the Louisiana transfer degree for the first time, and that will also serve us well. So that's just an holistic overview, but I will close by saying that, you know, when I think about the leaders at our college, our Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration, our Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Diversity and Inclusion, and our Provost, those three individuals instill the culture of awareness, understanding, fiscal efficiencies throughout the college. They work collectively to ensure our faculty, bringing our faculty senate in to look at the data, look at the information, and really understand what's driving the overall business model, but most importantly, how the success of that model impacts the success of our students so we can deliver holistic support to make them successful. So with that, we'll pause and entertain any questions.
Questions from board members? All right, hearing none, I will say one final thing. It's not lost on any of you, I know, as board members, that this is a shift of moving from the non-core areas where we've tried to streamline and find efficiencies to the core of operations. When you talk about the leaders that Chancellor Wainwright just mentioned, your chief financial officer, your provost on the academic side, and your student affairs folks in the room together, talking about the core of operations where 80% of your revenue is, or 80% of your budget is spent, and about 67 to 70% of your budget is realized. That is the core. And as I started with this discussion, Supervisor Spahn, I think this has been a journey for us over the last 3 or 4 years, but I think it will serve us well in the long term, and particularly with leadership like the two gentlemen at the table now. So thank you to both of you for your work. Very good. Mr. Chairman, that wraps up our board development session, and I will turn back to you for the items considered for the April 2021 meeting.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Point of chair's privilege, I ask that items H1 through H6 be reviewed in succession and taken up as one vote for all those items once the review concludes. Is there any objection? Hearing none, I would like to ask Supervisor Jackson to present the facilities action items for consideration by the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we have 6 items under facilities. First item is demolition of Carpentry building at Baton Rouge Community College, Port Allen campus.
Sir, Supervisor Jackson, we have before you multiple items. Obviously, this one is dealing with the demolition. Others deal with right-of-ways, but I'll start off. In this case, this is the demolition of a building that was built in 1983. It's a cinder block building in the Port Allen campus of BRCC. It's a dilapidated building that has a leaky roof. When it rains, water gets under the doors, it slips into the facility. And as such, it's kind of been used as a makeshift training / storage space, just simply because they have it. With that said, there are dollars that are available through facility planning and control for demolition. So that is what they are intending, if approved by the board, to use those dollars at FP&C to demolish that building. If there are no questions, I'll just read the recommendation. Staff recommends that the board approve the demolition of the Carpentry building at Baton Rouge Community College, BRCC, Port Allen campus. In accordance with revised statute 2212.1, the demolition of this building requires the approval of facility planning and control and the notification of the appropriate legislators.
Any questions? If not, item 2.
Or item number 2, this is a right-of-way for Delgado Community College on behalf of Entergy New Orleans LLC. This is for the West Bank Technology Center that is currently under construction. Actually, they're wrapping up that facility through Act 360, and it's been a very good process. If anything, this has been one of the model projects that we've had of many. As such, Entergy is asking for an access point to provide gas services to the facility. If there are no questions, staff recommends that the board authorize the president to execute a right-of-way agreement between Entergy New Orleans LLC and the LCTCS on behalf of Delgado Community College for the connection of gas service to the West Bank Technology Center. The legal description and technical drawing illustrating the area to be transferred will be maintained in the office of the Chief Operations Officer.
Any questions on item 2? If not, item 3.
With the right-of-ways, this is a right-of-way agreement on behalf of the River Parishes Community Colleges to Entergy. This is for the Reserve Campus Welding Facility, and this is for electrical services to connect to the facility. Staff recommends that the board authorize the president to execute a right-of-way agreement between Entergy Louisiana LLC and the LCTCS on behalf of River Parishes Community College for connection of electrical service to the Reserve Campus Welding Facility. The legal description and technical drawings illustrating the area to be transferred will be maintained in the office of the Chief Operations Officer.
Any questions on item 3? Item 4.
4, this is a right-of-way agreement on behalf of Sewella Technical Community College to the city of Lake Charles. And this has to do with the Act 360 Culinary Arts, Gaming, and Hospitality Facility, which requires moving a sewer line and lift station to a more appropriate area next to the facility to be maintained by the city of Lake Charles. As such, staff recommends that the board authorize the president to execute a right-of-way agreement between the city of Lake Charles and the LCTCS on behalf of Sewella Technical Community College to allow for the installation of sewer line and a lift station. The legal description and technical drawing illustrating the area to be transferred will be maintained in the office of the Chief Operations Officer.
Thank you. Any questions? Item 5.
Item 5, yes, sir. This is really a technical item. If you may recall, back at the February 10th, 2021 meeting, we approved this item, in essence, providing for a CEA that at that time included the LCTCS Facilities Corporation, when indeed it really should have been with the Louisiana Delta Community College Foundation as the private nonprofit who is to receive the benefits of the work that the city of Ruston is doing on behalf of the project. As such, we bring this back to you just as a technical amendment to the original board item to include or basically strike the LCTCS Facilities Corporation out from the agreement and to include in its place Louisiana Delta's Community College Foundation. As such, staff recommends the board authorize the president and chancellor of Louisiana Delta Community College to negotiate and execute a cooperative endeavor agreement and all documents required within the cooperative endeavor agreement between the LCTCS, the Louisiana Delta Community College Foundation, and the city of Ruston provide site improvements to the Louisiana Delta Community College Ruston Campus Act 360 project. This agreement requires the approval of the Louisiana Delta Community College Foundation.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions on that item? If not, last item, item 6, Joe.
Sir, last but not least, obviously you've heard the presentation from the Chancellor Stibe with the naming of the City Park Allied Health Charity School of Nursing facility. This basically enshrines and memorializes formal board action for the naming of that facility. As such, staff recommends that the board authorize Delgado Community College naming opportunities of a new construction on City Park campus. This is the Ochsner Center for Nursing and Allied Health. The new building is being funded through the state's Act 360 Facilities Improvement Program, requiring a combination of state bond financing and private matches from community leaders and private industry. The facility will house the college's historic Charity School of Nursing and Allied Health Division and all the outstanding Delgado academic programs under their auspices.
Any questions? If not, that's the end of the facilities report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Joe, get you some water and take a deep breath.
I think, I'm sorry, just a point of order. I think we need a vote.
I was getting to that.
Approval. Okay.
Second.
Sorry.
So we have a motion by Mr. Murphy and a second by Ms. Mount for the approval of agenda items H1 through H6 as presented. Is there any objection? We will do a roll call vote. Supervisor Price?
Yeah.
Supervisor Mount?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford?
Yes.
Supervisor, I'm sorry, I lost my way. Supervisor Carter?
Yes.
Supervisor Hardy?
Yes.
Supervisor McConduit?
Yes.
Supervisor Murphy?
Yes.
Supervisor Spears?
Yes.
Supervisor Spahn?
Yes.
Supervisor Toops?
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchell?
Yes, ma'am.
Supervisor Turner?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion carried.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much. Supervisor Hardy, would you present the finance action items for consideration by the board?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Chairman Price. There are 2 items for consideration by the board. The first associated with campus realignments.
Yes, sir. Before I begin this board item, I would like to provide some historical context to the board. Not that you don't necessarily need it, but just as a primer. As you may recall, back in March of 2017, this board took action to realign certain campuses of Central Louisiana Technical Community College, particularly the Oakdale campus to Sewella Technical Community College, and the Sabine Valley campus and Natchitoches campus were realigned from Northwest to Central. this is part of the purview of the board in managing its resources. And obviously, given the infrastructure that we have in place for both IT in terms of the HR, student, and financial service modules that we have in Banner, it really facilitates that transfer in a most smooth and efficient process possible. This has always been done to help provide services to our students to the best of our ability and aligning them to regional markets and to those programs that, again, most benefit those students. As you also may recall, switching gears a little bit, obviously SACS accreditation has been an issue that we've been working towards for some time now, both at North Shore and at Central. To provide some further context, as you know, it requires resources. And in the past, while we have received some funds for SACS accreditation, it really hasn't been a consistent methodical process from the state's perspective in terms of those resources. So what we're trying to do here is basically align certain campuses from Central to 3 other institutions who have those resources available, first off, and secondly, to provide more of a regional approach for certain areas of the state back to areas where they may be deemed more appropriate. And in that sense, we are working to start this process, if the board approves today, come this July 1, to have that action become finalized as soon as possible, but no later, hopefully no later than the next year, June or July of 2022. And with that said, I don't know, Dr. Sullivan, if there's any other comments that we made to bring forward and so forth. First off, I'll just open the floor for any questions or comments. A little bit of further background just before I read the recommendation is we have, in essence, 4 campuses that are being recommended for realignment. Avoyles, the Ward Nash campus from Avoyles will be realigned with South Louisiana Community College, and Lamar Salter to Sewella Technical Community College. The Natchitoches campus will be realigned with Bossier Community College, and Central Sabine Valley campus also aligned to Bossier Parish Community College. And I'll read the recommendation. Based upon the analysis of college budget plans and the accreditation plans of Central Louisiana Technical Community College, CLTCC, provided by Chancellor Sawtelle, and in support of the college achieving accreditation from the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges, SACS, COC, staff recommends that the board approve the following college campus and instructional site realignments, thereby improving CLTCC's accreditation effort and allowing for the administration and delivery of instruction on workforce training effective July 1, 2021, or as soon as possible thereafter, with all funds, obligations, property, personnel, programs, facilities, and functions. The Central Louisiana Technical Community College Avoyles campus and the accompanying prison education program is to be realigned with South Louisiana Community College. Number 2, the Central Louisiana Technical Community College Lamar Salter campus is to be realigned with Sewella Technical Community College. Number 3, the Central Louisiana Technical Community College Natchitoches campus is to be realigned with the Bossier Parish Community College. Number 4, Central Louisiana Technical Community College Sabine Valley campus is to be realigned with Bossier Parish Community College. Any student enrolled in a program or course of study at the above realigned campuses and instructional sites prior to the realignment shall be permitted to complete such program or course of study at no greater cost. The cost to the student prior to the realignment of such campuses shall remain in effect for a period not to exceed 2 years ending July 1, 2023, provided all applicable aid and scholarships are first applied to the student's cost of attendance. All impacted college leaders are to provide communication plans to the board at the June 2021 meeting, including strategies and plans for the successful realignment of campuses and instructional sites, factoring at a minimum such issues as personnel, budget finances, facilities, student tuition and fees, definition of timely progress towards completing a program or course of study, and notification plans for U.S. Department of Education and Veteran Affairs and accreditation.
Thank you for the recommendation, Joe. If I may, before we ask the board to comment or take action on this one, I would like to ask Chancellor Sawtelle if he would to come forward and talk a bit about the accreditation effort at Central Louisiana Technical Community College and also about the proposed realignment. Chancellor Sawtelle, Dr. Sawtelle, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, sir. What'd you say?
Sounds good, huh?
Just love hearing you say it. Thank you, sir. On that note, I want to say thank you to Dr. Sullivan and this board for your extraordinary confidence, support, and patience as I pursued a doctoral degree. It's wonderful to be a part of this team. Thank you, sir. Thank you to this board. And I also want to say thank you for all the work that has been put forth in this realignment. This is not a solution in search of a problem. This is a solution for students. This is a solution for communities. I want to thank my dear friend, Mr. Joe Marine and Dr. Renee Cintron and all of the folks that have been working, the chancellors, Aspinwall, Bateman, Vincent June, who have been working on this, and they have adopted these campuses, which are blood to us, as their own in even the prospect of it. You know, in 2012, whenever we were given a charge by the board and by the legislature to become SACS accredited, a conspiracy of circumstances unfolded. The fiscal cliff, the 15, the pandemic, the natural disasters of the past year. And when you think of how hard the mountain has been to climb, you know, we certainly makes us all the more resolute in doing so. Since 2020, since October 2020, we owe a lot of gratitude to this board and to this system office, this president. We've had some accomplishments. In October of last year, LCTCS announced that there was 4 of our 6 Our Louisiana 2020 goals were reached. 5 of 6 were reached at our Cltccc college. We had a COE virtual team visit, which we believe was highly successful, where we had 1 finding. I want to thank Vice Chancellor Bill Tulak, who's here with me today, who led that charge. We also have a promise of another 6-figure donation from a local entity for students. And we have just had, for the first time in 30 years, a legislative audit with 0 findings. Now, Supervisor Murphy, you remember back in the day when we were audited individually as campuses, that was a big deal. But when you think that 8 campuses worked together and had 0 findings, we're very, very proud of that. I want to thank System Office for their support. I want to thank I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our vice chancellors, Dr. Heather Poole, Ms. Misty Slater, Mr. Joey Bourne, for those successes, and our teams for making that a possibility. This successful audit now allows us under SACS guidelines that we are able to submit our application, and we're going to do so within the next month, April 30th, we will submit that application. I want to thank Dr. Sullivan and a team of folks, Dr. Wendy Palermo and others who have really risen to the occasion to assist us in getting across the finish line a little earlier than we expected. And this proposed realignment, as Mr. Marine said earlier, is not unprecedented. We did it in 2017. And if you look at Oakdale as a prototype, things are going very well because of Dr. Aspinwall's leadership. Secondly, we did it about 15 years ago when Sewella Technical Community College coincidentally gave the Morgan Smith campus to Cltccc so that they could move more nimbly towards accreditation. And this is very similar. And we're very grateful for this consideration. Very grateful to Dr. Sullivan, the board, all of the LCTCS system staff staff members, the chancellors, Neil Aspinwall, Rick Bateman, Vincent June, for all that they continue to do as we move forward in this way. But this is really about students. The students that will get a more assured accreditation with Cltccc, but also the 4 communities that will benefit from the colleges that will adopt them, and then those resources and those opportunities will be granted to them in due time, we believe confidently over the course of the next few months. So with that, I want to thank you again and open to any questions that we might have about how we as communities are responding. I'm glad to say that we have had conversations with many stakeholders, and an overwhelming majority have embraced this because they see the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Sawtelle and members of the board. The item that is before you is a significant step, but would ask at this time for your consideration of the item for realigning these 4 campuses to the colleges as provided in the recommendation.
Should we vote now or should we continue on?
A motion and a second before we can have a
So moved.
vote. So a motion by Ms. Mount, second by Mr. Jackson. Is there any discussion on the item? Any questions? We will do a roll call vote.
Perhaps if we can there, I think we could probably incorporate 7 and 8, right, as we discussed there, Mr. Chairman. So if we can, let's let's move to number 8, and then we'll do a roll call vote following item 8. Enough?
Certainly.
We withdraw the motion?
We'll withdraw that motion.
Yes.
And we will have another motion after we review item 8.
Okay, thank you for that. And the next item to be reviewed is the Board of Regents College Match Endowments.
Sir, this is an endowed match that we have with the Board of Regents, and we do this on a regular basis. Whenever we have donations come in, we bring these before the board for formal action before referring to the Board of Regents for acceptance, and this is just part of that process. We have a match here, a $30,000 donation with a $20,000 match out of the Board of Regents 8G fund, the LEQSF, Louisiana Education Quality Support Fund. As such, staff recommends that the board approve the endowed scholarship below: a River Parishes Community College Hancock Whitney Endowed First Generation Scholarship. It's a $50,000 total, again, comprised of a $30,000 in private funds and a $20,000 public match.
Any questions by the board?
Members, we would need a motion to approve item number 7 and 8.
I move.
Motion by Mr. Price, second by Ms. Mount. And we will do a roll call vote. Supervisor Price,
Yes.
Supervisor Mount,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford, Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Carter,
Yes.
Supervisor Hardy,
Yes.
Supervisor McConduit,
Yes.
Supervisor Murphy,
Yes.
Supervisor Spears,
Yes.
Supervisor Spawn,
Yes.
Supervisor Toops,
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchell,
Yes, ma'am.
Supervisor Turner.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Good. Before we move from item number 7, I would just ask if there are any questions of the chancellors that are at receiving institutions. We certainly can have those chancellors and leaders come forward. Any questions from the board for that group? All right. Hearing none, we'll move forward to the personnel agenda. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Supervisor Spahn will present the personnel agenda items for our consideration. Mr.
Thank you,
Spahn.
Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, as is appropriate, I would request a motion to enter into executive session to discuss the following 4 items. H9, appointment of interim chancellor at Louisiana Delta Community College. H10, appointment of chancellor for Louisiana Delta Community College. H11, adjustment of contract terms for CLTCC chancellor for completion of doctoral degree. And H12, pending and potential litigation. Ms. Kleinpeter, would you call the roll call vote, please?
Sure. We have a motion and a second for this action. Motion by Mr. Murphy and a second by Mr. Toops. And we'll do a roll call vote to enter executive session. It must be a unanimous vote to enter. Supervisor Price,
Yes.
Supervisor Mount,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Carter,
Yes.
Supervisor Hardy,
Yes.
Supervisor McConduit,
Yes.
Supervisor Murphy,
Yes.
Supervisor Spears,
Yes.
Supervisor Spawn,
Yes.
Supervisor Toops,
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchell,
Yes, ma'am.
and Supervisor Turner.
Yes.
Thank you. Members of the board, I ask that you exit out of this meeting and use the link for the executive session meeting, and we will see you in executive session. Landon, would you please share that document to YouTube and mute the microphones in here? Guys hear us?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Very good.
Yep.
All can.
Fantastic.
Okay. Just waiting them answer in here.
Sarah, whenever everybody's back, you can call roll to reestablish quorum.
Tara, I'm ready. Supervisor Price,
Here.
Supervisor Mount,
Here.
Supervisor Jackson,
Here.
Supervisor Bradford, Supervisor Carter is here.
Here.
Supervisor Hardy,
Here.
Supervisor McConduit. Here. Supervisor Murphy.
Here.
Supervisor Spears,
Here.
Supervisor Spawn,
Yes, ma'am.
Supervisor Toops is here. Supervisor Toops, we need an audible here. Supervisor Mitchell,
Here.
Supervisor Turner.
Here.
And as soon as we get a word from Supervisor Toops, we can go back into session.
Did you hear me, Sarah?
I did. Thank you, Tara.
Okay.
Just a second, Mr. Price.
Yes, ma'am. Waiting on you, your word. Toop's probably got his lunch by now that we didn't get.
Hey, where's my lunch? I'm hungry.
Is Supervisor Bradford still with us?
I don't see her
I
on
don't
my
either.
screen.
Sarah, have you texted Stevie?
To be clear, we have two that we're missing. Is that correct? Bradford and Toops?
Correct. There's one.
Thank you, Supervisor Toops. We're doing a roll call. Are you here? Supervisor Toops, are you here?
I am here.
Thank you. And now we're waiting on Supervisor Bradford to join the meeting and we'll be able to start back up.
Sarah, have you communicated with her?
Sir.
Oh, Lord, they're not froze up again, are they? No, it's just.
What do we do if they don't return?
Lynn, can you mute your mic?
What'd she say?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Bradford is having internet challenges at their house because of the weather. And
Okay.
I just spoke to her. She's trying to get back on. She just is having trouble.
It'd be worthwhile to provide her with a dial-in number so that in case she can't connect via Zoom, she could dial in by phone.
Okay.
Sarah, I think there is one in the invite. You might want to let Tari know that. Or would you like me to call her back?
no, sir, I'm on the phone with her now.
Okay.
Why don't you do the call-in option?
I hate this song.
So, DJ Sawtelle, do you have a playlist ready for us? Or were you too busy getting your PhD? He is going to do the phone in option. And so Katie or Landon, if you can watch for a phone in option.
Tari, is that USC down there?
This is Tari.
Hey, thanks for calling in.
So Tari, we've confirmed that everyone who was in the executive session is now present in the meeting. And this concludes the executive session. We've exited out of it at 12:21 p.m. and we may continue on with the agenda.
Okay, I would like to reconvene the meeting and state that no votes were taken and no consensus was reached during the executive session. Supervisor Spahn, would you continue with your items? Am I correct in that?
Let me see. When I looked at it earlier, I thought this wrapped up. I thought we were done, but I could be wrong. Let me go back into the the minutes.
So
Um,
Supervisor Spahn, we're on item number 9.
Yeah, so, yeah, the
Yeah, you're not done.
item, well, it goes back to what we were just discussing, I guess, and that is the appointment of an interim chancellor at Louisiana Delta Community College. So that's our item number 9. Sorry, I lost track there.
Sir, staff will read the recommendation. Staff recommends the board appoint Mr. Chris Broadwater as interim chancellor of Louisiana Delta Community College, effective April 14th, 2021, until such time a permanent chancellor assumes the position, but no later than June 30th, 2021. The appointment will provide an annual base salary of $190,000, a housing allowance of $20,000, a vehicle allowance of $5,000, and a civic organization allowance of $2,500.
I so move.
Motion by Ms. Carter,
Second.
second by Mr. Turner. You have to have a roll call vote. Supervisor Price,
Yes.
Supervisor Mount,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
yes,
Supervisor Carter,
Yes.
Supervisor Hardy,
Yes.
Supervisor McConduit,
Yes.
Supervisor Murphy,
Yes.
Supervisor Spears,
Yes.
Supervisor Spahn,
Yes.
Supervisor Toops,
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchell,
Yes, ma'am.
Supervisor Turner. And that motion is passed.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Chris Broadwater and his family for the willingness to transition once again to Louisiana Delta to provide service to the people of that region. I know it is a hardship family-wise, but I also know that you have a family that is very much supportive of this effort. And I'm going to share just a very brief comment. When I asked Chris if he was willing to make the return to Louisiana Delta, he said to me that he'd had an opportunity to go home and to talk with his family. And it was his wife and girls who said, "Dad, you need to go back to make sure that things are good at Louisiana Delta Community College." And so for that, we are thankful to you and to your family for the commitment. And I know that the people of Louisiana Delta are thankful as well.
Well, and I'd like to echo that. Thank you very much, Chris. So item number 10 is the appointment of Chancellor. So originally, item 9 was interim. Item 10 is the appointment of Chancellor at Louisiana Delta Community College.
Good, Mr. Chairman, I will take that item, and I want to begin with obviously the prior item was necessary as a result of the resignation of Dr. Scott Rouge, who this board confirmed in December, and we find ourselves in a place that is unusual. I've never witnessed it, to be frank with you, when we have 90 days upon seating of a new chancellor, had to find our way to another decision for the future of Louisiana Delta Community College. I can tell you that this discussion has not been an easy direction, but I can tell you that without exception, every member of this Board of Supervisors is focused on the long-term well-being of Louisiana Delta Community College and the people of Northeast Louisiana. The discussion that the item outlines is as follows. Apologies. Staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors appoint Dr. Randy Esters as the next chancellor of Louisiana Delta Community College. Further, staff recommends that the president be authorized by the board to negotiate terms up to and including the start date for Dr. Esters at Louisiana Delta Community College.
I make the motion.
Recommendation by staff.
I move.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, who made that move?
Paul Price.
Mr. Price, and second by Mr. Murphy. And we'll do a roll call vote. Supervisor Price,
Yes.
Supervisor Mount,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
yes,
Supervisor Carter,
yes,
Supervisor Hardy,
Yes.
Supervisor McConduit,
Yes.
Supervisor Murphy,
Yes.
Supervisor Spears,
Yes.
Supervisor Spawn,
Yes.
Supervisor Toops,
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchell,
yes, ma'am.
Supervisor Turner.
Yes.
And that motion has passed.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to item 11, the adjustment of contract terms for the Cltccc Chancellor for completion of doctoral degrees.
Yes, sir. When Chancellor Sautel was originally appointed as the chancellor of the college, the board approved an additional compensation of $10,000
put me back on speed.
salary upon attainment of a doctoral degree. He has recently received that doctoral degree in adult learning and development from Northwestern State University of Louisiana. So as such, staff recommends that the board provide a $10,000 base salary increase to Chancellor Jimmy Sautel for the attainment of his doctorate degree.
I so move.
Motion by Ms.
Moved.
Carter and a second by
I'm second.
Mr. Price.
Yes, ma'am.
Roll call vote. Supervisor Price,
Yes.
Supervisor Mount,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
yes,
Supervisor Carter,
Yes,
Supervisor Hardy,
Yes.
Supervisor McConduit,
Yes.
Supervisor Murphy,
Yes.
Supervisor Spears,
Yes.
Supervisor Spawn,
Yes.
Supervisor Toops,
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchell,
Yes,
and Supervisor Turner.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
President Sullivan, you were kind enough to share a few comments with us about the trek that has been undertaken in order to achieve that PhD. And I was impressed by all the work and time and commitment that went into that. Would you mind sharing just a little bit of that with the audience, please?
Absolutely. And might ask Dr. Sautel to remove his mask so we can see the bright red cheeks when I begin to tell the story. Dr. Sautel began this journey upon his appointment by this board as the Chancellor at Central Louisiana Technical Community College. At that time, he was enrolled at the University of New Orleans, pursuing a doctoral degree, and unfortunately, due to circumstances well beyond his control, Chancellor Sautel was faced with almost starting over. He could have stopped. He could have said, this isn't the right time. But instead, he enrolled at Northwestern State University and found a home there. And I have to quote one member of his committee who spoke on Monday and said that Jimmy Sautel is, in quotation marks, the model candidate for a doctoral degree. A guy that has been out there in the business, on the street every day, working to make sure to deliver on the two-year college mission, and was able to do the research necessary to be able to show what that practice looks like. And 7 years now removed, Chancellor Sautel is now Dr. Jimmy Sautel. We're very proud of you, buddy.
Yeah.
Well done, Jimmy. Dr. Sautel, excuse me. Okay, our final item, item 12, is pending and potential litigation.
Following a discussion and presentation by legal counsel, Mr. Hamilton, the board was made aware of legal and pending litigation related issues, and we will look forward to continuing that dialogue at the appropriate time. No action required on that item.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that concludes all the personnel action items.
I believe it does. Very good job. Thank you, sir. I would like to present the consent agenda items for consideration by the board. I think everyone has a copy of those.
Sir,
If I may, if I may go ahead, I'm sorry, with the motion and second. Apologies.
Staff recommends that the board approve the consent agenda, which consists of agenda items I1 through I5.
Motion by Ms. Mount, second by
So
Mr.
moved.
Turner.
Good. I just want to simply point out before we vote on this item, the number of adoption items that you see on this consent agenda. If you recall, going back maybe 3-4 years ago, there was no such thing as adopting a curriculum. But when you have an instrumentation curriculum at Northwest Louisiana Technical Community College, as an example, that's one of the finest in the nation, the adoption element and policy that you put in place now allows colleges like South Louisiana Community College or Fletcher Technical Community College to pick up and move forward with that curriculum in very short order. I want to thank Dr. Citron and his team for putting that in place. Certainly has made a big difference in our ability to be responsive to business and industry.
I have a motion and a second, and we'll do a roll call vote to approve those items. Supervisor Price,
Yes.
Supervisor Mount,
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
yes,
Supervisor Carter,
yes,
Supervisor Hardy,
Yes.
Supervisor McConduit,
Yes.
Supervisor Murphy,
Yeah.
Supervisor Spears,
Yes.
Supervisor Spawn,
Yes.
Supervisor Toops,
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchell,
yes,
Supervisor Turner.
Yes.
That motion carried.
Deal. I would like to encourage y'all to look at your updates and review the information provided. Is there any additional business that comes before the board?
Chairman, I'd like to note for the record, there were no requests for public comment at any of the ways that were possible for people to make that request.
Thank you, ma'am. One announcement to make, remind all y'all to complete your 2020 Tier 2.1 financial disclosure forms. We all got our email from Mike Richmond on April 6th. I'll have to go back and find it. But I would like to ask for any other announcements to come before the board. Hearing none, I commend this board for the bravery and adversity we went through today. It was one heck of a run early on. It did seem to settle down. We've got some, it was pretty interesting meeting. Is there any, I would request a motion to adjourn if anybody wants to make it.
Move.
So moved.
Everybody does.
Everybody did,
Yes.
for the
Thank
record.
y'all.
I second that too.
Good. Thank y'all. Enjoyed it. We'll do it again next month.
Is it roll call?
I hope to see you on the 7th at the Workforce Experience. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.